The morning of June 6, 1944, broke over the coasts of Normandy like the quiet before a storm, but beneath the fog and the muted light lay a tension that had been months in the making, a tension felt by millions of soldiers, planners, and civilians across Europe. For years, the Allied forces had battled across continents, inching toward victory through sacrifice and determination, but the liberation of Western Europe demanded more than bravery, it demanded meticulous planning on a scale that had never been attempted. Operation Overlord, the code name for the D-Day landings, was to be the decisive strike against Nazi-occupied France, the opening act in the liberation of a continent and the turning point that could finally tilt the balance of the war in favor of the Allies. Across the English Channel, a vast armada waited, every vessel, every aircraft, and every soldier poised with the understanding that history would be written in the coming hours. At the heart of this unprecedented operation stood General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force, a man whose steady calm masked the monumental pressure of coordinating hundreds of thousands of troops from multiple nations. Eisenhower understood that the lives of ordinary soldiers, the hopes of occupied nations, and the strategic destiny of Europe rested on the success of Overlord. Every detail mattered, from the timing of the landing crafts to the sequencing of air support, from the coordination of paratroopers behind enemy lines to the precise calculation of tides and weather conditions. The weight of responsibility was immense, and yet it was carried with quiet determination, the hallmark of leadership under pressure. He and his staff had spent months analyzing terrain, enemy positions, and logistical challenges, knowing that any miscalculation could result in catastrophic loss. To ensure success, the Allies launched a campaign of deception designed to mislead the German High Command about the intended landing site. Known as Operation Bodyguard, this elaborate ruse included fake armies, inflatable tanks, dummy landing crafts, and deceptive radio transmissions suggesting that the main assault would strike at the Pas-de-Calais, far from Normandy. Double agents fed selective intelligence to the Germans, reinforcing the illusion of an imminent attack elsewhere. The objective was simple but critical: force the enemy to disperse their forces, leaving the actual invasion site less defended and more vulnerable. It was a psychological battle, one that unfolded silently across radio waves, maps, and secret communications, yet it proved as essential as any artillery shell or paratrooper drop. The scope of the operation was staggering. Over 156,000 Allied troops would land on 5 separate beaches: Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword, supported by more than 5,000 ships and landing crafts that braved the turbulent English Channel. Airborne divisions, numbering over 13,000 soldiers, were tasked with parachuting behind enemy lines in darkness to seize bridges, disrupt communications, and prevent German reinforcements from reaching the front. Each aspect of the plan required near-perfect synchronization. Naval bombardments were timed to weaken fortifications just as landing crafts approached the shore, while air support and paratrooper landings needed to be coordinated within minutes to avoid friendly fire and maximize the element of surprise. The operation was a testament not only to strategic ingenuity but also to human endurance and cooperation on an international scale. The beaches themselves posed formidable challenges. Omaha Beach, where American forces would face some of the most intense resistance, was heavily fortified with machine gun nests, artillery positions, barbed wire, and hidden obstacles designed to slow and kill anyone attempting to land. The cliffs and terrain complicated the assault further, forcing soldiers to wade through chest-deep water under relentless fire. Gold and Sword beaches, assigned to British forces, demanded precise timing to secure towns and establish supply lines, while Juno Beach, designated for Canadian troops, involved navigating complex beach defenses while facing a determined enemy. Utah Beach, relatively less fortified, nonetheless required careful coordination to achieve a secure foothold. Each beach was a microcosm of the larger campaign, an intersection of strategy, courage, and the raw brutality of war. Paratroopers played a crucial role in the invasion, landing under the cover of darkness to disrupt enemy positions and secure key objectives. Units from the U.S. 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions, along with the British 6th Airborne Division, were dropped behind German lines to capture bridges, crossroads, and artillery positions. While many landed off target due to strong winds or navigational errors, their presence created confusion, hindered German communication, and slowed reinforcements. These airborne troops operated in isolation, often facing superior enemy forces without immediate support, yet their success in delaying German counterattacks proved vital to the progress of the beach landings. Their courage, adaptability, and initiative exemplified the human element that could turn meticulous planning into battlefield success. The German defenses, collectively known as the Atlantic Wall, had been fortified over years, stretching from Norway to the French coast. Concrete bunkers, minefields, machine gun nests, and strategically positioned artillery were designed to repel any seaborne assault. Yet despite this formidable fortification, the Germans were hampered by uncertainty. The deception campaigns, combined with rapid Allied intelligence gathering, meant that key units were mispositioned or hesitant to respond decisively. Commanders faced conflicting reports, logistical limitations, and the shock of a multi-pronged attack, all of which slowed the German reaction and allowed the Allies to gain critical beachheads. Even the strongest defenses could not fully withstand the combination of surprise, firepower, and relentless pressure from determined attackers. The human dimension of D-Day extended far beyond soldiers. Behind every strategic calculation lay the lives of ordinary men, many of whom had trained for months or even years, acutely aware that survival was never guaranteed. Families across Europe and North America awaited news with bated breath, hoping that their sons, brothers, and husbands would return. In occupied France, civilians lived with the quiet terror and cautious hope that liberation was imminent, not yet certain that the Allies would succeed in penetrating the seemingly impregnable Nazi defenses. The combined hopes, fears, and courage of countless individuals shaped the emotional landscape of the invasion, reminding the world that war, while fought with strategy and weapons, is ultimately human. As the first waves of troops approached the Normandy coast, all preparations converged into action. Naval artillery softened enemy positions, paratroopers descended into darkness, and landing crafts pressed forward, carrying soldiers into the crucible of combat. Chaos, courage, and determination intertwined as the operation unfolded, each moment fraught with danger and potential. Soldiers overcame obstacles, pressed forward under fire, and established critical footholds on the beaches, demonstrating the extraordinary resilience and coordination that Operation Overlord demanded. The landings marked the beginning of a campaign that would liberate a continent, shift the balance of power, and redefine the trajectory of World War II. Chapter 1 of Operation Overlord, therefore, captures more than the mechanics of an invasion. It illustrates the convergence of meticulous planning, international cooperation, and human courage at a pivotal moment in history. Normandy was not just a battlefield, it was the stage on which strategy met bravery, where preparation met improvisation, and where the fate of millions was decided by both calculation and resolve. The storm had arrived on those beaches, but it was matched by the extraordinary efforts of men and nations united in a single purpose: the liberation of Europe, the reclaiming of freedom, and the turning of the tide against tyranny. The dawn of D-Day was a moment that history would remember, a testament to planning, courage, and the indomitable spirit of those who dared to change the course of the world. The landings and the first day of battle. As the first light of dawn broke over Normandy on June 6, 1944, the beaches transformed from quiet, misty shores into scenes of chaos, determination, and unprecedented military endeavor. After months of preparation, Allied troops advanced toward fortified German positions under a sky still heavy with fog and the distant echo of artillery. Operation Overlord was no longer a plan on paper, it was unfolding in real time, a convergence of sea, air, and land forces whose success would determine the future of Western Europe. The moment had arrived for ordinary soldiers to perform extraordinary feats, for strategy to meet the brutal reality of combat, and for decades of planning to be tested against the fiercest defenses the Nazis could mount. On the western flank, Utah Beach, primarily assigned to American forces, saw troops advancing through relatively lighter fortifications, yet the danger remained immense. Soldiers disembarked from landing crafts into waist-deep water, navigating obstacles and mines designed to halt any invasion. Despite initial disorientation caused by strong currents, the Americans quickly adapted, moving inland and securing key positions with minimal casualties relative to the more heavily defended beaches. Their success provided a vital anchor for subsequent waves and enabled armored units to press forward, linking the beachhead to inland objectives. This early foothold would become a launching point for further advances, proving that meticulous reconnaissance and planning could yield tangible results even under fire. In stark contrast, Omaha Beach presented one of the most formidable challenges. German fortifications, including bunkers, artillery, and concealed machine gun nests, inflicted devastating casualties on incoming waves. The chaos of landing under concentrated fire created confusion and delayed progress, yet it also revealed the extraordinary courage of individual soldiers. Platoons and squads improvised under relentless attack, scaling cliffs, clearing obstacles, and establishing footholds on the heavily defended shore. Medics, engineers, and officers risked their lives repeatedly to save comrades and maintain momentum. By late morning, despite significant losses, small groups had penetrated enemy defenses, demonstrating that determination, coordination, and resilience could overcome even the most imposing fortifications. Meanwhile, the British forces advancing on Gold and Sword beaches faced a combination of artillery, mines, and well-prepared German infantry. Their objectives included securing beach exits, capturing strategic towns, and linking the landing zones to facilitate the movement of reinforcements and supplies. The British soldiers encountered resistance that slowed initial progress but did not halt it. Ingenious tactics, including smoke screens, suppressive fire, and coordinated tank infantry advances, allowed troops to move inland, neutralizing strongpoints one by one. By midday, significant portions of the beaches were secured, enabling engineers to clear obstacles and establish supply routes, a critical step in sustaining the broader invasion. Juno Beach, where Canadian forces spearheaded the assault, saw some of the most intense fighting. High tides, reinforced obstacles, and concentrated German machine gun fire created a deadly gauntlet. Yet Canadian troops, demonstrating discipline and adaptability, pressed forward with combined infantry and armored tactics. They captured crucial exits, cleared resistance pockets, and established positions essential for the inland advance. The successful landing at Juno exemplified the value of coordination between nations and the rigorous training that had prepared troops for exactly these circumstances, reinforcing the theme that preparation and bravery were inseparable in the crucible of battle. The airborne operations that preceded the beach landings were equally decisive, though fraught with difficulty. Paratroopers from the U.S. 82nd and 101st Divisions, along with British 6th Airborne units, descended behind enemy lines to seize bridges, disrupt communication lines, and prevent German reinforcements from reaching the beaches. Scattered drops, caused by night conditions, strong winds, and enemy fire, created confusion but also forced German units to spread thin, inadvertently aiding the seaborne landings. Small groups of paratroopers executed sabotage operations, ambushed patrols, and held critical positions until reinforcements arrived. Their actions, though often isolated and dangerous, amplified the success of the amphibious assault, highlighting the interdependence of multiple forces in achieving strategic objectives. The German response, though fierce, was hampered by confusion and miscalculation. Hitler's insistence on personal oversight delayed the release of key armored divisions, while the effectiveness of Allied deception campaigns led many German commanders to misinterpret the scale and location of the main assault. Units that could have reinforced the beaches were either immobilized, misdirected, or engaged piecemeal, allowing Allied forces to consolidate gains despite heavy casualties. Even as German artillery and machine gun fire inflicted devastating losses, the inability to mount a coordinated counterattack revealed critical vulnerabilities in Hitler's defensive strategy and underscored the importance of surprise, intelligence, and planning in modern warfare. The human toll of the first day was profound. Thousands of soldiers were killed, wounded, or missing, yet their sacrifice enabled the establishment of beachheads that would facilitate the liberation of France. The psychological impact on both the Allied troops and the German defenders was immediate. Confidence and morale were tested under extreme conditions. For ordinary soldiers, courage was measured not in strategy but in each step across treacherous sands, in every attempt to carry wounded comrades to safety, and in the relentless push forward despite fear and exhaustion. In occupied France, civilians witnessed the first signs of liberation, cautiously hopeful as the sound of artillery and aircraft announced that the long-awaited moment of reprieve from Nazi occupation was beginning to arrive. By evening, the beaches of Normandy, though scarred and littered with debris, had been secured enough to allow reinforcements, supplies, and armored units to advance. The establishment of these footholds marked the first tangible victory of Operation Overlord, yet the battle for Normandy was far from complete. Inland objectives, including towns, roads, and bridges, would require continued fighting over weeks to secure, but the success of the initial landings proved the feasibility of the Allied strategy and provided momentum for the campaign ahead. D-Day was a demonstration of coordination across armies, navies, and air forces, revealing how meticulous preparation, combined with courage and flexibility, could achieve what once seemed impossible. The events of June 6, 1944, reshaped the trajectory of the war. Operation Overlord's first day not only established a vital beachhead but also inflicted a psychological blow to German forces, undermining the perception of invincibility that had surrounded the Atlantic Wall. It validated months of planning, training, and deception, proving that large-scale amphibious assaults, though fraught with risk, could succeed with careful orchestration and unwavering resolve. The courage displayed by soldiers, the sacrifices endured, and the ingenuity of commanders set a precedent for subsequent operations and left an enduring legacy in military history. Chapter 2, therefore, stands as a testament to the human spirit, strategic ingenuity, and international cooperation that defined the first day of Operation Overlord. It captures the unfolding of a carefully orchestrated plan into the reality of combat, highlighting the bravery of ordinary individuals performing extraordinary acts and the complexity of coordinating a multinational effort against a well-prepared enemy. The Normandy beaches were no longer mere geography, they became the stage where history turned, where the liberation of Western Europe began in earnest, and where the courage of thousands set the course for a continent's future. Pushing inland, securing Normandy and the struggle beyond the beaches. The dawn after D-Day was not a moment for celebration but a signal for relentless action. The initial beachheads at Normandy had been secured, but the true test for the Allies lay inland, where German resistance intensified and the terrain itself became a formidable adversary. What had begun as a daring amphibious operation transformed into a grueling campaign, where every mile gained demanded careful coordination, ingenuity, and extraordinary bravery. The victories on the beaches were only the first step. The path to liberation of France required overcoming a network of fortified towns, entrenched enemy positions, and logistical obstacles that threatened to stall the advance. Allied forces moved cautiously but decisively. Roads leading inland were heavily mined, bridges destroyed, and villages fortified with machine guns and artillery. Engineers worked tirelessly under fire, clearing mines, repairing bridges, and enabling the passage of troops, tanks, and supplies. Infantry units advanced with combined arms tactics, coordinating closely with armored divisions and artillery bombardments to neutralize resistance. Every engagement was a test of planning and improvisation. Small towns like Saint-Mère-Église, Carentan, and Bayeux became focal points of conflict, where control of roads and junctions could determine the speed of the broader offensive. Progress was measured not in miles but in objectives seized and obstacles overcome, each success a step toward the ultimate goal of reaching the heart of occupied France. The paratroopers and airborne units who had landed on D-Day continued to play a pivotal role. Isolated in pockets behind enemy lines, they disrupted German communications, ambushed patrols, and held key positions until reinforcements could link up. Their efforts created confusion among German commanders, preventing coordinated counterattacks that might have pushed the Allies back into the sea. Despite facing shortages of supplies and the constant threat of encirclement, these soldiers maintained their positions through ingenuity and sheer determination. Their resistance highlighted the critical interplay between strategic planning and battlefield improvisation, as small units could significantly influence the operational momentum of the campaign. German forces, though weakened by the deception and surprise of D-Day, were far from defeated. Reinforcements slowly arrived, and counterattacks in the first week sought to push Allied troops back toward the coast. Panzer divisions, operating with remarkable tactical skill, launched localized offensives against vulnerable sectors, particularly around Caen, a city of immense strategic importance. The battle for Caen became emblematic of the challenges facing the Allies: urban combat in fortified towns, the need to integrate air, artillery, and infantry support, and the constant threat of German armor. Progress was often measured in days rather than hours, as every street, hill, and building required methodical clearing and careful planning to minimize losses. Supply lines emerged as another critical factor. Maintaining the flow of ammunition, food, medical supplies, and reinforcements from the beaches to advancing units required unprecedented logistical coordination. Ports were not immediately available, forcing reliance on temporary solutions such as mulberry harbors, artificial ports constructed to facilitate rapid unloading of cargo. Fuel, water, and medical evacuations were meticulously organized, often under fire, to ensure that the momentum of the advance was not lost. Every logistical success was as vital as battlefield victories, as the inability to supply troops in a timely manner could have reversed gains and jeopardized the entire campaign. The Allies also faced the harsh reality of Normandy's terrain. The region's fields were divided by hedgerows, dense, earthen walls topped with shrubs that concealed German positions and slowed movement. These natural obstacles, combined with mines and sniper fire, transformed each advance into a deadly puzzle. Infantry units had to clear hedgerows house by house, field by field, while coordinating with tanks and artillery. Casualties were high, and progress often measured in yards rather than miles, yet these challenges forged cohesion among units, demanding trust, communication, and improvisation under fire. The hedgerow fighting, brutal and relentless, became a defining feature of the Normandy campaign, testing not only military skill but the endurance and resolve of every soldier involved. Civilian populations in Normandy, meanwhile, lived amid the chaos, experiencing both liberation and destruction. Towns caught in the crossfire suffered heavy damage, and civilians were forced to flee or take refuge in makeshift shelters. Yet for many, the arrival of Allied forces represented hope and the beginning of an end to years of occupation. Resistance groups coordinated with advancing troops, providing intelligence and assistance, and helping to secure key positions. The interplay between military operations and civilian support demonstrated the broader dimension of the campaign. Liberation was not achieved solely through combat but through collaboration, intelligence, and shared purpose. Air superiority continued to play a decisive role in the inland campaign. Allied aircraft targeted German supply lines, artillery positions, and reinforcements, while providing close support to advancing infantry. Precision bombing and reconnaissance missions allowed commanders to anticipate enemy movements, disrupt communications, and shape the battlefield in favor of the advancing troops. The coordination between ground forces and air support exemplified the evolution of modern warfare, where success depended on integrated operations across multiple domains rather than isolated actions. By the end of the first week following D-Day, the Allies had made measurable but hard-fought progress. Several towns and key junctions were captured, linking the beachheads and enabling further penetration into Normandy. Casualties had been heavy, yet morale remained strong, bolstered by the tangible evidence that the invasion had succeeded in establishing a permanent foothold. German forces, though still capable and dangerous, were now forced into reactive positions, unable to fully exploit their remaining advantages. The momentum had shifted. The Allies were no longer merely landing, they were advancing, consolidating, and transforming the initial beachhead into the backbone of a broader liberation campaign. Chapter 3 of the Normandy story demonstrates that Operation Overlord was not simply a one-day event but a protracted struggle demanding persistence, innovation, and sacrifice. The advance inland tested the limits of human endurance, logistical ingenuity, and tactical coordination, while exposing the resilience of German defenses and the complexity of modern warfare. Every bridge seized, town liberated, and mile gained reflected the intertwined efforts of soldiers, planners, and support units working toward a common goal. The narrative of Normandy, Beyond the Beaches, is a story of relentless pressure, careful strategy, and the courage of countless individuals committed to a cause larger than themselves, illustrating that victory is forged not only in moments of heroism but in sustained effort under the harshest conditions. Breaking through, liberation of Normandy and the road ahead. The weeks following D-Day transformed Normandy from a battlefield into a theater of relentless struggle, where the tide of war shifted decisively in favor of the Allies. What began as perilous beach landings and cautious inland advances evolved into coordinated offensives, targeting fortified positions, key towns, and strategic infrastructure. By mid-July 1944, the operation that had once seemed almost impossible was yielding tangible results. Allied forces, though exhausted and heavily battered, pressed forward with the determination of men and nations aware that the liberation of Western Europe depended on every mile gained, every town secured, and every enemy position neutralized. The city of Caen, a focal point of German defense in Normandy, became the symbol of this struggle. Capturing Caen was essential to establish supply routes and facilitate further operations toward the Seine River. British and Canadian forces engaged in continuous combat, combining artillery barrages, infantry maneuvers, and armored support to overcome entrenched German forces. Street-to-street fighting, reinforced bunkers, and coordinated counterattacks created a brutal environment, yet through methodical planning and extraordinary tenacity, Allied forces gradually secured the city. The fall of Caen demonstrated how careful strategy, integration of air and ground operations, and persistent pressure could overcome even the most formidable defensive networks. Beyond urban centers, Allied forces confronted the formidable geography of Normandy. The region's rivers, marshlands, and hedgerow-strewn fields slowed advances, while mines and booby traps inflicted heavy casualties and tested morale. Engineers and support units played a crucial role, clearing obstacles, constructing bridges, and maintaining supply lines under fire. The logistical challenge was immense. Sustaining troops in forward positions required constant coordination of fuel, ammunition, medical support, and reinforcements. The innovative use of artificial harbors, mobile bridges, and temporary roads ensured the advance did not stall, turning the beaches secured on D-Day into a launching point for a sustained inland campaign. German forces, though increasingly outmaneuvered, mounted fierce resistance. Panzer divisions and infantry units launched counterattacks designed to sever supply lines, retake towns, and slow Allied momentum. Yet these efforts were hampered by Allied air superiority, which disrupted reinforcements, destroyed key bridges, and forced enemy units into defensive positions. The constant threat of airstrikes, combined with the relentless pressure from advancing troops, wore down German forces both physically and psychologically. By late July, the cumulative effect of sustained offensives had weakened German command structures and undermined the cohesion of defensive positions, setting the stage for decisive breakthroughs. The final phase of the Normandy campaign required meticulous coordination between multiple national forces. British, Canadian, American, and Free French units operated in concert, integrating tactics, communications, and intelligence to exploit vulnerabilities in German lines. Specialized units, including engineers, reconnaissance teams, and artillery, provided critical support, enabling infantry and armored divisions to capture towns, secure roadways, and establish defensive perimeters. Each advance, though often costly, extended the reach of Allied control, gradually transforming a precarious foothold into a broad corridor capable of sustaining continued operations into France. This multinational collaboration highlighted the strength of combined strategy and demonstrated how shared objectives could overcome even the most entrenched opposition. Civilians in Normandy, though caught between advancing Allied forces and retreating German units, experienced the tangible benefits of liberation. Towns once subjected to curfews, forced labor, and brutal repression now saw the return of public order, local governance, and humanitarian aid. Resistance networks provided intelligence, guided troops, and helped secure liberated areas, demonstrating that the human element of collaboration was as vital as any tactical maneuver. The liberation of Normandy was therefore not only a military victory but also a restoration of hope, dignity, and freedom for communities that had endured years of occupation and oppression. By the end of July 1944, the Allies had achieved what had seemed almost impossible 3 weeks earlier, the complete liberation of Normandy's territory from German control. Beaches, towns, and key junctions were under secure Allied control, supply lines were firmly established, and the path into the heart of France was open. The victory, however, was neither swift nor without cost. Thousands of soldiers had fallen, towns bore the scars of battle, and the region's landscape was transformed by the violence of modern warfare. Yet the success of Operation Overlord culminating in the liberation of Normandy represented a strategic triumph of extraordinary significance, providing a springboard for the liberation of Paris and the eventual push into Germany. The strategic implications of Normandy extended far beyond the immediate territory. The Allied foothold enabled the rapid deployment of additional troops and supplies, facilitating operations across northern France and toward the Rhine. It forced the German military to divert resources from the Eastern Front and other theaters, weakening their overall strategic position. Perhaps most importantly, it demonstrated the effectiveness of combined Allied operations. Coordination across land, sea, and air forces, reinforced by intelligence, deception, and meticulous planning, could overcome even the most formidable defenses. The lessons learned in Normandy would shape military strategy for the remainder of the war and remain a benchmark in the history of amphibious operations. Chapter 4 thus concludes the story of Operation Overlord by illustrating how careful planning, international collaboration, and human determination converged to achieve a decisive breakthrough. The liberation of Normandy was more than a tactical victory, it was a turning point that reshaped the trajectory of World War II, proving that courage, strategy, and cooperation could overcome adversity on a grand scale. Soldiers, engineers, medics, and civilians all played indispensable roles in this historic endeavor, creating a narrative of sacrifice, resilience, and triumph. Normandy became a symbol not only of liberation but of the extraordinary lengths to which nations and individuals could go to reclaim freedom, setting the stage for the eventual defeat of Nazi Germany and the restoration of peace across Europe.